Let me ask you a question. What if the one pill you've been taking every single day to protect your heart is actually the thing making you feel worse? It's a really unsettling thought, I know, but it affects millions of people. And today, we're going to get into the surprising science behind it. So, does any of this sound familiar? You're taking your blood pressure medicine like you're supposed to, but you're just exhausted all the time. Maybe you've put on a few pounds you can't explain, or you get completely out of breath just going up a flight of stairs. If you're nodding your head right now, you need to hear this, because the answer might be hiding in plain sight, in a pill that's been around for over 50 years. Okay, so what we're talking about here is a class of drugs called beta blockers. I want you to go ahead and take a look at your prescription bottle. Seriously. Do you see a name like metoprolol or maybe atenolol? If you do, then this is for you. These drugs are incredibly common, but as we're about to find out, common definitely doesn't always mean best. So, what do these things actually do? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like a lock and key. Your heart has all these tiny little locks on it, right? And adrenaline is the key. When that key goes in the lock, your heart speeds up and pumps harder. What beta blockers do is they basically get in there and plug up the lock. They block the key. This slows your heart down and voila, your blood pressure goes down. It sounds great in theory, doesn't it? And for a really long time, that's exactly what we all thought. For decades, beta blockers were the absolute gold standard. But here's the thing, and this is the most important takeaway from our whole conversation today: the science has moved on. We know so much more now. And what the evidence tells us is that for many people over 60, especially if your only major health issue is high blood pressure, these drugs are just not the best first choice anymore. In fact, they might actually be doing more harm than good. So, where did this big shift in thinking come from? This wasn't just some doctor changing their mind. This was a seismic shift in our scientific understanding. And it all started with one massive, game-changing study. And here it is. The turning point was a huge study called the ASCOT trial. This thing was enormous. It followed more than 19,000 people, and it compared a group taking a beta blocker to a group taking newer medications. And you know what? The results were so dramatic, so clear, they actually had to stop the trial early. This is why. The patients who were on the newer drugs had 23% fewer major cardiovascular events. Let that sink in. We're talking 23% fewer strokes, 23% fewer heart attacks. In medicine, a number that big isn't just a finding, it's a bombshell. It's a complete game changer. And this wasn't some little study that got buried in a medical journal. The United Kingdom looked at this evidence and officially changed its national guidelines. They said, okay, beta blockers are no longer our first choice for high blood pressure. And yet, here in the US, millions of people are still being put on them first, a lot of the time just out of old habits. But here's the kicker. It's not just that other drugs work better. It's that the evidence now shows that for folks over 60, beta blockers can come with 3 specific and frankly underappreciated dangers that you need to know about. Okay, danger number 1 is this deep, profound fatigue and what doctors call exercise intolerance. Remember how beta blockers slow your heart? Well, that basically puts a speed limit, a ceiling on how fast your heart can beat, even when you need it to. So you try to climb some stairs or play with the grandkids, and boo, you just hit a wall. Your body can't get the oxygen it needs. It's an absolutely vicious cycle. This just says it all. This is from a real patient, Harold. He was 71, and after 3 years on a beta blocker, he'd gained 14 pounds. He had to give up his evening walks, and he described his feeling as running on half a tank all day, every day. His doctor just told him it was part of getting older, but it wasn't. It was the pill. Danger number 2 is metabolic damage, and this one is a really, really big deal. It's been proven again and again in studies that beta blockers can increase your insulin resistance, which just makes it harder for your body to handle sugar. And on top of that, they can mess up your cholesterol levels. Now, just look at this chart. One huge analysis found that patients on beta blockers had a 22% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to people on other blood pressure pills. Think about that. You're taking a pill to help your heart, and it's actively increasing your risk for another serious chronic disease. That's a terrible trade-off. And that brings us to danger number 3, the fall risk. Beta blockers can cause something with a fancy name, orthostatic hypotension. But all that means is that sudden, dizzy, head rush feeling you get when you stand up too quickly. You know the one. For a young person, it's annoying. For a senior, that one moment of dizziness can lead to a fall. And a fall can be absolutely devastating. And I want to be really clear about how serious a fall can be. For someone over 70, breaking a hip carries up to a 30% mortality rate in the first year, a 30% chance of not surviving the year. So a fall caused by a medication isn't a minor side effect. It can be a life-ending event. The risk is truly that high. Okay, before we go another step further, I need everyone to listen very, very carefully. This is, without a doubt, the most important message today. Do not, I repeat, do not stop taking a beta blocker on your own. If you just stop cold turkey, it can cause a dangerous rebound effect that could spike your heart rate and blood pressure to dangerous levels. Any change has to be done slowly and always under your doctor's supervision. Please, promise me you'll remember that. All right, so if beta blockers have all these potential problems, what's the solution? What are the safer, better alternatives that all this modern evidence points to? Let's talk about the good news. While the two classes of drugs that consistently come out on top in the research are calcium channel blockers, a common one is amlodipine, and another class called ARBs, like losartan, you can see it right here, side by side. When you look at preventing strokes, the metabolic risk, and just your ability to get up and move, these newer alternatives are the clear winners for simple, uncomplicated hypertension. And let me tell you about Dorothy. This is what's possible. She was 74, and her doctors slowly and carefully transitioned her off her beta blocker. And get this, within 3 months, her blood sugar numbers returned to normal, she lost 7 pounds without even trying, and her blood pressure was actually better than before. Her words say everything. I felt like myself again. So, the big question is, how do you take all this information and actually do something with it? It all begins with having a smart, prepared, and confident conversation with your doctor, and I'm going to give you a simple plan to do just that. Here it is, 5 easy steps. First, just double-check your meds and confirm you're on a beta blocker for hypertension. Second, write down a few key questions. A great one is, Doctor, does my current prescription reflect the most recent medical evidence for someone like me? Third, just politely ask for a formal medication review. Fourth, if you both agree to a change, make sure you walk out of there with the exact schedule for tapering off the old drug. And finally, number 5, go in there with your own data. Track your energy levels, your dizziness, your blood pressure readings for a couple weeks beforehand. It makes for a much more productive conversation. And last but certainly not least, I need to make one thing absolutely crystal clear. Everything we've talked about today applies to people with what we call uncomplicated high blood pressure. If you have other specific heart conditions, if you've had a heart attack, if you have diagnosed heart failure, or certain arrhythmias like AFib, then beta blockers are still absolutely the right life-saving medication for you. The science on that is solid. So we'll end right where we started, with a question. A question for you to take with you. You deserve a treatment plan that is built on the best evidence we have today, not on medical habits from 50 years ago. I really hope this has empowered you to go ask the right questions and start that crucial conversation.